The night I tried to protect my sister from a known rapist, I ended up getting roofied and waking up confused she was assaulted anyway. This may be lengthy, but I genuinely need outside perspectives on this matter. Hello everyone, I understand the title seems harsh, but I hope you will hear me out. I am a 17-year-old male, and I have a younger adopted sister who is 15 years old. Recently, she was assaulted by someone who is a well-known rapist. I use the term known with caution since everyone in our social circle is aware of what he is, yet his wealthy family means that the authorities have not taken the situation seriously. To start, I want to express that I do not have a fondness for my sister, and the feeling is mutual. We were both adopted along with our biological siblings. She, along with her older and younger sisters aged 20 years and 9 years, was adopted prior to me and my 3 brothers, who are 15, 17, and 18 years old, a year later. I became a part of this family at the age of 10, while she was 8. From the outset, we did not like each other, and we made no effort to conceal that fact. One of my most vivid memories is simply sitting in the living room, where we exchanged sentiments of mutual dislike, before eventually agreeing to coexist civilly while holding a grudge against each other. That arrangement worked well until about a year ago. It's also crucial to note that I am transgender, female to male, and realized this identity at a young age. I was fortunate enough to have top surgery at 14, but I have not yet undergone bottom surgery. I also have a diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and am currently being evaluated for histrionic personality disorder. Now, on to the core of the story. My sister began high school in 2024. Approximately a year ago, she suddenly expressed a strong desire to befriend me. While many might view this as a positive sign, I am being truthful when I say that I have no desire to be friends with her. She tends to be bothersome, frequently tries to insert herself into my social circle with my boyfriend and friends, displays entitlement, and overall, I perceive her as rather spoiled. My biological siblings grasp my perspective, yet my parents, my boyfriend, and one other friend, whom I will refer to as Casey, also female to male, 19 years old, are giving me a hard time for allegedly bullying my sister. They pressured me heavily, but I stood firm in my stance that I feel no obligation to be her friend since she already has a stable group of friends. I cannot fathom why she has recently become so fixated on me. Fast forward to a week ago, when she received an invitation to a party from the rapist, who I will refer to as P, 18 years old. Apparently, they had grown closer in recent months without anyone's knowledge, and he invited her along with several other kids to his home for a Valentine's celebration. As mentioned, P has a troubling history, and I am among his victims. I struggled significantly with substance abuse and alcohol at the end of middle school and the beginning of high school. One evening during my first year of high school, P attempted to assault me while he was intoxicated. Thankfully, Casey intervened and removed him from me, but I know others have not been as fortunate. One of those individuals is another trans friend of mine, whom I shall call Hunter, 17, female to male. I recently discovered that he was drugged and assaulted by P as well, but hesitated to file charges due to concerns about exposing his identity as transgender, and the fact that he is no longer a virgin. His family is very religious. I never disclosed my experience with P to my parents, but they remained skeptical due to the age difference. Eventually, they decided that one of my older brothers should accompany her. However, since my youngest brother is considered too young, and my oldest brother was away on a camping trip for the weekend, it came down to a choice between my twin brother and myself. And unbelievably, he played the autism card. I have witnessed this individual thrive at parties and clubs, yet suddenly he brings up sensory issues at a house gathering. I attempted to excuse myself by reminding them of a date I had planned with my boyfriend, who was sitting next to me, only for him to agree to postpone our outing for a day so that I could go instead. So it appeared I had to attend. Wonderful. Later that night, I sought a conversation with my sister, whom I will call Venus, in private, intending to inform her about the true nature of P. I wanted to share my experiences and those of Hunter, as well as others. To my astonishment, she outright rejected my warnings and accused me of fabricating all of it to avoid attending the party, an utterly outrageous notion. just because I may have histrionic personality disorder does not mean I perpetually lie. Afterward, I noticed she was troubled by our conversation. The next day, I called Hunter in hopes of speaking with her together. He came over, and the outcome was the same. She felt like we were all ganging up on her as she tried to explore her happiness, whatever that entails. I then consulted Casey, who had witnessed P-Tik's behavior firsthand and who Venus typically trusted more. Nothing changed. The week went by and Valentine's Day arrived. As we prepared to head to the party, I contemplated sneaking out on the way there. However, I felt the urge to keep an eye on her. While I may not particularly care for her, I refused to be cruel. Upon arrival, P tried to greet me, but I simply shook my head, attempting to send him a clear message that I would be vigilant should he attempt anything inappropriate. The celebration commenced, with P and Venus mingling with various acquaintances, and I encountered another guy I used to know from karate. We had a conversation, but I was careful to maintain a watchful eye on her. This worked for some time. I was sipping soda and everything seemed fine. Then I excused myself to use the restroom, but upon my return, the guy had vanished. I wandered into the kitchen, where someone offered me a beer, specifically my favorite brand. Although hesitant, I was feeling extremely frustrated by the circumstances, so I convinced myself that one drink wouldn't hurt and it wouldn't lead to a relapse. Afterward, I returned to the living room, and P and Venus were still conversing. I remember Venus giving me a genuine smile and a thumbs up from across the room, which I returned. Yet after that moment, everything went black. I have no memory of what took place next. My first recollection is waking up in a bedroom that was not mine, with the karate guy beside me, handing me a painkiller and water. In summary, I was drugged. Yes, looking back, I am filled with regret for taking a beer from a stranger. The guy explained how he found me unconscious on the couch and managed to take me home before anything terrible could occur. I was infuriated, and after nearly an hour of vomiting, I thanked him and returned home only to discover that my phone was missing. This made me even angrier, but when I arrived home, my parents were already waiting for me. Before I had the chance to speak, they began yelling at me, calling me an addict, a terrible person, a psycho, every derogatory term imaginable. I could barely understand what had taken place, but apparently Venus had gotten excessively intoxicated and was assaulted by P before the police picked her up and returned her home. They questioned me about where I had been, but when I attempted to clarify the situation regarding the drugging, they dismissed it, insisting I was an alcoholic who should never have consumed the beer and simply relapsed. Furthermore, Venus informed them that I had prior knowledge of P, and they are now angry at me for not disclosing that information. It has been a disheartening experience. To top it off, they informed me that I was being grounded for the spring holiday, during which I was supposed to meet my boyfriend's parents. He is Japanese and an exchange student, using a ticket I had saved up for and paid for myself. Now, everyone is upset with me and views me as a petty alcoholic. Even my boyfriend seems disappointed, despite claiming that he believes my story. My parents are on the verge of sending me back to rehab, and I am at my breaking point. While I genuinely regret if my sister was assaulted, I, along with 2 others, warned her. It is not my responsibility to prevent her from making poor choices, and I am incredibly frustrated with those around me who assume I allowed my sister to be attacked out of spite. That being said, I may not be the most impartial person, so I seek your opinions. Is this situation my fault? Should I have gone to my parents with this information, even though I am highly uncomfortable sharing my own history of non-consensual experiences? Am I being too harsh on her? Story 2. I returned from vacation to find myself transferred without warning. I had an anxiety attack, teaching became impossible, and I quit. I am uncertain whether this qualifies as malicious compliance, but I will share it here for the time being. During my previous employment, I served as a peer trainer. Essentially, I was responsible for performing my assigned duties to their fullest while also instructing newcomers who had just started. Not only did I agree to take on this additional role, but I volunteered for it as well. Therefore, this is not a tale of excessive labor. I was assigned to a spacious area with 5 workstations of machinery arranged in a line from one side to the other. Each station performed the same functions, albeit with its own unique glitches and issues. One of the walls was actually a large window overlooking the break room. I experienced significant anxiety about being approached unexpectedly or being observed without my awareness, which can provoke sudden panic attacks that last for hours or until I can escape the room or building to rest. This is something I detest, as it is highly inconvenient. Fortunately, this was mostly manageable because I recognized my triggers and could either avoid them or take precautions, such as positioning myself with my back to a wall. My colleagues were generally empathetic and did not surprise me. This window, however, also became a source of distraction for the trainees, who would try to spot and engage with their friends in the break room. I understood that training for a job that was extremely tedious, lasting 12 hours and occurring during the night shift, might lead to restlessness, but our focus needed to be on overseeing the large machines that required constant attention to prevent jamming or breaking, which happened frequently. Fortunately, my workstation was the third one away from the window, allowing me to maintain focus easily. The issue arose, as it frequently does in such narratives, with the arrival of a new supervisor in our section of the building. He assumed responsibility for stations 1 and 2, while I remained assigned to Station 3. Technically, Station 1 was designated as the primary training station. Previously, I had established a verbal agreement with his predecessor and the training team that I would continue at Station 3 due to the reasons I have mentioned. Without prior notification or consultation, I returned from a vacation day to discover that I had already been reassigned to Station 1, despite my coworkers expressing their objections during my absence. To clarify, there was a reason the training team was willing to accommodate my requests. I excelled in my job. I was the go-to person whenever a machine malfunctioned, and even the maintenance team would struggle to resolve those issues. My supervisors had indicated they would not permit me to transfer away from their team unless I insisted on doing so. As such, an unexpected transfer of this nature was often considered quite disrespectful and typically served as a form of punishment. Assuming that, since I had never met this new supervisor before, I would simply speak with him to establish a similar agreement as I had with his predecessors for the past 4 years. I even brought the lead from Station 1 with me to support my case and serve as a witness. She was familiar with my capabilities as an operator since I frequently assisted her with her machinery. I quickly found that he was unwilling to reconsider the transfer, so I calmly informed him that I was prepared to resign as a trainer that day and that the additional pay should be halted immediately. I was not at risk of losing my job, and the additional pay was less than $1 more per hour. I had taken on this role because I wanted to, not because I required it. He was taken aback. Eventually, we reached an agreement that I would complete the training for my current trainee in my area while he sought someone else, along with processing my request to resign from training. That seemed acceptable. However, it quickly became clear that it was not acceptable. He returned 3 days later, claiming without any evidence or documentation that Human Resources stated I had no choice in the matter. This was troubling for various reasons. Firstly, he did not convene a meeting to discuss this with me. Rather, he had snuck up behind me with a group of supervisors to deliver this directive, despite my numerous warnings about my anxiety triggers. Secondly, none of the supervisors accompanying him held any authority over my role. My lead, direct supervisor, or any member of the training team I reported to were absent. It is essential to clarify that this man did not have any supervisory power over me. While he may have been assigned to the training section, he had no authority over the trainers. Thus, if a trainer was operating in a different section, he could not enforce decisions upon them. The third issue causing me concern was that, instead of seeking a new trainer as he had promised, he dedicated his time to finding a means to compel me to comply with his demands. As soon as he and his group materialized out of nowhere to physically surround me and restrict my movement, I could feel my fight or flight response activating. I struggled to maintain coherence, barely processing what they were saying. I simply nodded in agreement, hoping that this would expedite their departure so I could regain my composure. I truly dislike causing a scene. Once they left, I took a break before transitioning to Station 1. This is where the malicious compliance aspect arises. Despite my efforts, I could not calm myself during the break. So when I returned to sit near the large window, The added anxiety of that situation overwhelmed me, just as I had predicted. Consequently, since I had given multiple clear warnings about my anxiety, I decided not to suppress the anxiety attack this time. I do not frequently experience such attacks and usually strive to minimize the impact on those around me. Typically, this results in silent tears, a bit of fidgeting, and some pacing. However, on this occasion, I allowed it to manifest frantic pacing, flushed face, tears streaming down my cheeks, strained breathing, and digging my nails into my arms and hands. My unfortunate trainee was bewildered by my behavior, and I was unable to instruct her since I often become nonverbal when my anxiety escalates, rendering me ineffective as a trainer. When my coworker returned from his break, who had previously been one of my trainees, and was a kind individual, he stepped in so I could go home. After exchanging numerous calls and messages with my leads and colleagues, I utilized some paid time off and did not return until I was no longer officially a trainer and could transfer back to my prior area. The supervisor in question was terminated a few weeks later due to multiple complaints, in addition to being caught in an inappropriate situation with a coworker inside the building. She was also fired, much to the relief of everyone. She had been an unbearable presence, yelling at my young and anxious trainees for adhering to orders that she did not understand. Honestly, those two were a disaster together, and I hope they found happiness in each other so that others would not have to endure their presence.